This is The Life of the Mind. We're on episode 2 now, and I am your host, Hank Pattison. So, what are we talking about today? What is on the mind of The Life of the Mind? Last night, I watched the season finale of Rick and Morty Season 2. Rick and Morty is easily my favorite ongoing cartoon series right now. It started up last year. It's done by... Who is Rick and Morty done by? I know that it's the guy Dan Harmon, who was the creator of Community, and I can't remember the guy who does the voices on it. The guy who did the voice of Lemon Grab on Adventure Time. Rick and Morty. Just looking it up right now to get a little refresher here. Justin Rowland. Justin Rowland is the voice of both Morty and Rick. And he was the voice of Lemon Grab on Adventure Time. Very recognizable if you hear him as Lemon Grab. Anytime he shrieks, you can hear a lot of that. Unacceptable! That was a terrible impression of Lemon Grab. That is not how Lemon Grab talks at all whatsoever. I don't know if I have a good Lemon Grab impression in me. And I don't think now is the time to try to figure that out while the microphone's running. But I will say this. Rick and Morty is easily the best cartoon currently on the air. Until Rick and Morty came out, I would have said the best cartoon currently on the air is The Venture Brothers. And The Venture Brothers is still a really great cartoon. I'll probably go on about it at length at some other time, but right now I'm talking about Rick and Morty. And Rick and Morty, over the past year and a half, has definitely earned itself the number one spot in what I think is the greatest cartoon I've ever seen. What are some of the other greatest cartoons I've ever seen? Let me think about the list here. When I was a little kid, I was super into Warner Brothers cartoons, Merry Melodies, the Bugs Bunny and Tweety Show, anything with Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner. I liked the kinetics. I liked the way that Chuck Jones directed animation. I liked the way the fluid motion to all the animation. Things got so much cheaper and crappier in the 70s and 80s and with Hanna-Barbera. And I don't know. I'm a bit of a snob when it comes to animation. So then I got a little bit older, and I really fell in love with The Simpsons, like you do. For me, it would be seasons, I guess, 3 to 8. Those are probably my biggest Simpsons seasons. You get all the good stuff like, well, I got Mr. Plow on my mind right now because a buddy of mine drives a... What does he drive? He drives a tow truck, but there's still something very Plow-esque about the size of his vehicle and the way that he drives it around town. So, anyway, after Mr. Plow, after The Simpsons, I remember my dad and I watching a lot of the first season of Ren and Stimpy together, and that blew my mind. I had never seen anything like Ren and Stimpy before. And then, I don't know, and then there was a whole bunch of good cartoons. There was good stuff, there's bad stuff. Like I say, Venture Brothers is absolutely amazing. But then I saw Rick and Morty. And Rick and Morty does a whole bunch of things right. It's very funny. Duh. It's very adult. The animation is very good. It is full of references. Like, the whole thing is just one H.P. Lovecraft monster after another, combined with really good pop culture references. Series creator Dan Harmon clearly is not a really big fan of Christopher Nolan movies, and neither am I. So I really enjoy hearing him take the piss out of Christopher Nolan movies. They did a whole episode that was just a big riff on Inception, with lots of little Inception jokes. And I've heard him on other... Dan Harmon does the Harmontown podcast, and he has torn into Inception. I've never even seen Inception. I just know Christopher Nolan from his Batman movies. I don't know. I feel weird about some of this stuff. I hate trashing art. You know, people spend time and effort, and they make a thing. Once upon a time, many, many, many years ago, I was working in a comic book store. I still work in a comic book store, but this was many, 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 many years ago. And this dude came in, and he asked me if my store had anything for Chronicles of Riddick. And I made fun of the movie. I told him that I thought it was a terrible looking movie. I said so in a very funny way, I'm sure. I thought I was being very clever. But naturally, I hurt the guy's feelings, as you do. And as well, it turned out that he was, I never got to the bottom of this. I don't know if he was a producer on the film or if he just knew people or he had something to do with making the movie. And he was really upset. And he called, and, I was totally cool with, like, you're right. I behave like an asshole when I'm at work. I should not be expressing negative opinions towards other people's art. But he said something else. And I mean, I don't know. Make of this what you will, but he mentioned that he knew a lot of people who worked on the movie, and he specifically knew some of the stunt people who worked on the movie, and they hurt themselves. They put themselves into this movie. They tried their best. They put their bodies at risk. They took injury for it. And they were really proud of what they did. And I feel that way sometimes. When I'm looking at movies I don't like, I can still see there's a ton of people who are really passionate, who are just pouring their hearts into a thing, and they're trying to make it be something really good. So, I'm willing to always say, I don't like this thing, but sometimes it feels like kind of a dick move to look at like, wow, like this movie took 4 months to shoot. A couple of hundred people poured their hearts and souls into it to do the best job they could. And now you're just going to sit back after watching it for an hour and a half, doing absolutely nothing on your ass, and you're going to tell them what they did wrong. I mean, obviously, like, critique is fine. Like, that's what we all do. But there's levels to it. And how did this all start? This all started with me saying Rick and Morty likes to make fun of Christopher Nolan. And I guess then I was going to say, I am not a huge fan of Christopher Nolan. I'm really glad that he's a successful filmmaker. I don't wish the guy any harm. I mean, there's maybe one or two filmmakers out there in the world where I'm like, you have a negative message that you are putting out to the world, and I don't think you should be allowed to make movies anymore. Or just not even allowed. It saddens me that people choose to see your movies, which allows you to have the funding to make more movies. That is not how I feel about Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan is fine. Christopher Nolan is a restaurant I don't like to eat at. That's all there is to it. There's nothing, I'm not going to protest the restaurant. I'm not going to tell people they're wrong for eating at the restaurant, and I'm certainly not going to try to get the restaurant shut down. I just don't really choose to eat there. It's not bad food. Here's the thing. There's a lot of really good food out there that I don't really much care for. I had this girlfriend once. She was slightly, I don't know, she was from a different social economic background than I was from. And sometimes when we hung out with her family, we'd wind up going to these really fancy restaurants. Places where the napkins are made out of cloth and they're clearly like washing them and recycling them or something, or I don't even know what those places do. One of those places where you legitimately cannot find a hamburger on their menu. Everything has fancy, funky names. A lot of it involves duck and really creamy, rich stuff, and I don't know, that stuff just gives me a stomach ache. You know what I like? I like a burger. I like some French fries. I'm a very simple guy. That's how I roll. So ridiculous. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is, I don't like to say that food is bad. I prefer to say that food is not to my taste. There's a type of food that I really enjoy eating, and if we're stretching this artistic metaphor further, there's a type of food that I enjoy cooking. That doesn't mean that things I don't like shouldn't exist. I mean, if a restaurant is serving poop, then yeah, they should probably be shut down by the Food and Drug Administration or whatever the Canadian equivalent of that is. And similarly, if you're making art that is just putting poop out into the world, like, I don't know, like, I hate this ethnic group, or these people suck, or whatever, like, then okay, then that sucks and you shouldn't be allowed to do what you do anymore. But other than that, art is just art, man. Maybe I think you put too much paprika in your lasagna. Maybe somebody else likes a lot of paprika in their lasagna. All of this is to say, what the hell was I talking about? Was I talking about Rick and Morty like 5 minutes ago? And like now I'm just talking about paprika and lasagna? What the hell is going on here? I just I really like it when people don't like the things that I don't like. I love hearing people say of like, "Oh yeah, I tried to watch that thing. I did not much care for it, and here is why I do not care for it." When it's something I don't care for. When it's something I love, I also kind of enjoy hearing a critique if it's something I can respond to, so that I can say, "Yeah, it's cool you didn't like that. I loved it." Here's what I love. I love Rick and Morty. It's so funny. It's so dark. There's a sense of realism to it, like the people, the little animated characters have feelings and a lifeline. And I mean, there's such great continuity to the show. You can watch everybody growing and evolving and coming to understand things about themselves. It's, I think it's got more humanity and personal growth than just about any live action drama I've ever seen. And part of that is they're willing to take chances. They're willing to shake things up. They're willing to say, this thing happened, and now nothing will ever be the same ever again. Because every once in a while, in life, something happens, and then nothing is the same ever again. I feel like I started this off wanting to talk about Rick and Morty, and I don't know if I've really talked about Rick and Morty at all. Just kind of blathered on about a bunch of weird metaphors and stuff. I don't know. Is that cool? Maybe we should hear some music. That was not music. I live and work in Vancouver, BC. And the other night, I went to go take the garbage out at the end of my night of work, and I couldn't go take the garbage out because the back alley was full of all these crazy bright lights. They film some of the DC superhero TV shows here in Vancouver. That's The Flash and Arrow was the first one. And I think we're getting, I know we're getting, I just can't remember what the title of it is, something Heroes of Tomorrow, Tomorrow's Heroes. Yeah, it's going to have Hawk Girl, I think maybe Hawkman as well. Anyways, they film a bunch of superhero stuff in my city, and because of one of those filmings, I couldn't take the garbage out at the end of the night. And I got to write a note for my coworkers, for my boss, specifically saying, couldn't take out the garbage last night, the Flash was in the back alley. And on a meta level, that makes me very happy. It makes me very happy to be inconvenienced by... I know. I'm inconvenienced by a TV show, but I'm inconvenienced by a superhero. I mean, if I were living in the DC universe and superheroes were a real thing, that would be a legit thing. Like, I went to take the garbage out and the Flash was having some kind of a superhero battle back there, so I could not take the garbage out. Instead, I just left it by the back door, locked up, and went home, because that's what you do. I'm pretty sure it was the Flash. It could have been Green Arrow. Never know. I think it was the Flash. I didn't actually see him, but that's the thing about the Flash. He's really quick. I've watched some of the first season of The Flash. I think I watched all of the second season of Arrow, but not all of the first and third. And then Arrow is going on to its fourth season right now, and The Flash is going on to his second season. I got some hometown pride, and as a struggling actor with a comic book sci-fi fetish, it's hard for me to not look at those TV shows and see them as, in many regards, they're the golden hoop. Wait, what? What's the hell is a golden hoop? What am I trying to think here? I think I'm thinking of a golden ring, which is a really outdated expression. To be on one of those shows, man. I mean, that's, in some regards, it would mean more to me to get a couple of lines in Flash or Arrow than it would mean for me to get a couple of lines in the new Star Wars. The Star Wars would probably pay better, and obviously you're going to be seen by a lot more people, and you're going to, man, if you're a minor character in Star Wars, you don't even get a line of dialogue, you are still going to stand the test of time. Evidence number one is Biggs Darklighter, my number one favorite character. Anyways, my point is, I think it would be super badass to be in the DC universe. And I think getting to be an actor in a TV show about the DC universe is the closest I will get to being in the DC universe, short of having a complete nervous breakdown or discovering that parallel dimension theory is true, which I don't think is the case, as much as we would love to believe that sort of thing. So, well, once again, what was my point? What was I building up to? I feel like there was something going on there where I was like, here's the thing, and in conclusion, well, I'm sorry. You don't get an in conclusion. You get, as I said, some rambling meandering. So I mentioned that I work for a living. I work in a comic book store. I work at Golden Age Collectibles in downtown Vancouver. Once again, if you are listening to this, you're probably somebody who knows me. I can't imagine that this would be pertinent information to anybody. But what does this lead up to? This week, what came out this week that was really cool? The hardcover edition of Southern Bastards. Southern Bastards is my favorite comic series that's coming out currently. It was written by Jason Aaron, who wrote one of my last favorite Vertigo comics, Scalped. Scalped was intense. It was so badass, and at the same time, it got so sad and miserable. It was amazing. It was, I want to say it's the closest equivalent that comics have to The Wire so far, outside of the complexity of something like Watchmen. I'm really getting off track here. Now I'm just trying to think about what is the graphic novel equivalent to The Wire. Somewhere between The Boys and Scalped, I'd say you would have that. So am I saying Scalped is one of the greatest graphic novel series ever written? I might be saying that. It's really gorgeous art, and the storytelling is just, the characters are really rich, and I think it does a very good job of being cartoonishly large, and at the same time, human and real. Which is important to me in the stories that I read, that I get some sense of humanity that I can relate to from them. It's one of the reasons I don't read a lot of comic books that are coming out right now, because there's nothing inside them that I can relate to. When I read a Batman comic, when I look through the Batman comics, they're just stories about Batman they're about this dude. They're mythological tales. I don't set in an urban environment. I don't know. I just when I read them, they don't feel as human as I feel. When I read Scalped, oh man, those people, they seem really human. They seem really fucked up and doomed, is what they seem. So, Southern Bastards is the new series coming out from Jason Aaron, and the hardcover edition of I think the first 12 issues just came out last Wednesday, and Southern Bastards is incredible so far. I mean, I'm probably giving it extra credit because Scalped was so good, and it's a what is it? God, I was going to say it's a Southern crime novel, but that feels a little too simplistic. But it's a story about a small town in the deep South where things are really shitty, and where a lot of the people are really shitty, and every once in a while somebody might try to stand against that. And honestly, it doesn't go super well for them. But we're only 12 issues into what will probably be a 50 to 70 issue series. That's generally how long these kind of series go on for. So, I mean, I think things are going to be bad and bleak for a real long time, and we'll be lucky if anything good comes out of any of it. Because that's life, man. That's life. Life is not happy endings. Life isn't really even about endings, not unless you die or move away. And even then, like, if you move away, your story continues, and the stories of everybody you left behind still continue. So, I mean, nothing ever ends, man. That's just an illusion taught to us by the media, by the different forms of entertainment that we are sold, because it makes something easier to market and digest if there is a conclusion to it, whereas open-ended stories leave people uncomfortable. People like conclusions. They like knowing when they close this book, when they stop watching this TV show, they're going to know what the hell was going on. And I don't mean to disparage against that. I feel that way very strongly. I like knowing what the hell was going on. I'm the kind of guy who, like, at the end of a TV series, if I can get my hands on the series Bible and sort of understand the actual rules and framework that were supporting the narratives, I love that stuff, man. I want to know. I want to know what the monster's homeworld was. I want to know what they named themselves in their own language. I want to know why the ghost could appear at certain times of day and not at other times. I want there to be some kind of, functionality to the whole thing. And at the same time, I recognize that is not the way the world works. And there's a lot of people who feel it's important to tell stories that represent life that way, that represent, you're never going to know. You are going to have billions of more questions than you get answers for in your life. I imagine for the average human, you will probably get 1% of the questions you ask in your life will actually get an answer. And they're relatively important answers, but there's so many more questions. That's kind of philosophical, ain't it? Yeah. Conjecturing on conjectures. Conjectures are us. So a friend of mine was just telling me what her 3 favorite Adventure Time characters were. And I thought her list was weird. Weird. Who are your favorite Adventure Time characters? Oh my God, I'm talking to myself alone in a room. You can't talk back to me. My 3 favorite Adventure Time characters. I had to do a little searching on Google for this just to refresh myself on things. But off the top of my head, and these aren't very... I was surprised at how mainstream or like common my responses were, but like really quickly, without putting too much thought into it, it would be in no specific order: Marceline, Lumpy Space Princess, and BMO.
Those are my 3 favorite characters. I think maybe I just listed them in the opposite order that they are my favorite in. Just I'm thinking, like, if I'm watching an episode and it's a BMO episode, I'm pretty happy. And same with LSP. I think LSP might be my favorite. I think I might be of like, oh man, if this is an episode about LSP, I'm going to settle in and watch this action go down. Marceline usually means there's going to be some songs. And admittedly, I really like the Adventure Time songs. I normally really hate musical interludes. As you can tell by the way I keep putting in musical interludes into this podcast. But the Adventure Time musical interludes are generally really good. They get stuck inside my head. So, yeah, no complaints there. Those are my 3 favorite Adventure Time characters. That means so little to you probably, but I like thinking about that. I challenged a bunch of friends of mine the other day to list me who their top 7 characters, like Marvel characters to be on the Avengers, DC characters to be on the Justice League of America. Who would you pick? Who would be your choices? And there's certain things. Man, my coworker, Carl picked Spider-Man, but he picked Spider-Man when he had the power cosmic. So basically he was like, I would like to have 2 Silver Surfers on my team. And I was like, you can't do that, Carl. I don't know what rules we have established for this, but one of the rules is you can't just pick the most powerful character in the universe. Otherwise, you're going to have a team of like, well, I think Galactus should clone himself 8 times, and that'll be my Avengers and Aunt May to make pies. Actually, I would read a comic that was about 8 Avengers and Aunt May baking pies. If it was written by Garth Ennis. No, if I was writing it? Well, of course I'd read it if I was writing it. Oh yeah, also, I went and checked. I wanted to say this. Southern Bastards is drawn by Jason Latour. I'm probably saying that too Frenchy. Or not Frenchy enough. Those are the 2 ways you can say that name. So written by Jason Aaron and drawn by Jason Latour. That's double Jason action for the price of a single book. Hard to conceive of. I know it. Anyway, I feel like my cup of coffee is just about done here. Oh man, it is definitely very cold at this point. So that might conclude us for episode 2 of The Life of the Mind. It's fun to say things that way. Unless I can think of anything else really important. Oh my god, I need to tell you guys. I don't have anything I need to tell you. This is just stuff that I'm saying. So yeah, Life of the Mind, episode 2. Tell your friends, reblog it, put it on your Twitter and your Facebook account so that people are like, oh my god, look at this thing. I'm totally going to listen to this thing. That's so interesting. That's so interesting that I tell my friends, and then my friends will tell their friends. And that's how things go. Seriously though, thanks for listening, and have a wonderful time period until you next hear the melodic tones of my voice.